talk about another hot topic, and that is gold. Gold prices are sizzling, 53,000 per 10 grams in many mandis across India. And this may have, of course, dulled jewelry demand significantly, but since gold is present in almost every Indian household, for those Indian households who may be struggling with cash flow and cash crunch problems, gold loans turn out to be quite a lucrative, well, maybe not a lucrative, but a very reasonable option for a lot of households. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about, of course, what does this high gold price also mean for existing gold loan borrowers with Aparna Ramachandra, the founder director of rectifycredit.com. Aparna, lovely having you back with us on the Money Show today. So let's start off with the fact that, gold prices have rallied very, very significantly. And when I go to a bank with, a certain amount of gold that I would like to pledge for a gold loan, they give me a certain percentage of loan to value. So let's say if, my gold value is 1,000 rupees, they'll, maybe give me a loan of 600 rupees or 700 rupees. Now that, the value of gold has gone up so much, and let's say if I'm a household that's, maybe in need of cash, do you think that a gold loan would be one of the most reasonably priced options for me versus, maybe say a personal loan or any other kind of credit facility?
Thank you for having me back on the show once again. See, this comes with a rider. The plus point of a gold loan is there is hardly any paperwork, because they just need your basic Aadhaar and your KYC, and they are able to disburse the loan. And it is usually 75 to 80% of the current value of that jewelry that you are going to be mortgaging. But the problem with the gold loan is you need to be very sure that you are going to be able to repay that loan. Otherwise, the chances of you losing the asset is pretty high. Because let's understand few things very clearly. People who opt for a gold loan are, Indians per se are traditionally very attached to gold. So it is usually the last option, the last resort before you actually pledge the family gold. So when you are there, which means somewhere the rest of the avenues you have kind of closed on, is where you decide to take the gold loan. So my only point here is you need to be very careful and very clear that you will be able to repay that loan and get your gold back. If that you are clear, then for the short term, per se, this may be a good option to raise money.
Okay, so I'll come to that as well in just a bit on the surety of your capability of repaying that loan. But before that, if I have to compare interest rates, a personal loan is an unsecured loan, but I would imagine since I am giving my gold, to the bank, is it reasonable for me to expect the interest rates to be lower than, a personal loan?
They are lower. If you see, they are anywhere between 9.5% to 14%, that kind of a range. Of course, the other thing is, which is not part of this calculation, is the processing fee. They usually have a 1 to 3% of processing fee, and then tomorrow pre-closure pay penalty. All those are there. But if I were to compare interest rate to interest rate, then this is cheaper than a personal loan.
Okay, all right. Now let's come to that bit where maybe people are struggling to pay loans. Let's say it was a pre-existing gold loan, and then we had the coronavirus crisis, and we've often seen businesses or sole proprietorships tend to take gold loans by pledging some of the jewelry. And let's say if their business has been disrupted, Aparna, so obviously they may face a few problems in sort of repaying the gold. So firstly, before we reach that extreme step of the bank actually seizing your gold and sort of keeping it, how much time is given to the borrower to sort of what sort of grace period would be reasonable for a borrower to ask the bank or the financial institution?
Normally what happens is the lender gives you an option to extend this with a penalty. So you are charged some kind of a penal interest, and then they give you time before you can repay. And after the say about 90 to 120 days of this is where you are served a notice that you've still not repaid, and this is the you were overshot your repayment timeline, and now we will be going forward with the auction. So somewhere between 3 to 6 months is what you have roughly for you to get your act together and start repaying. But during this time, the penal interest is very steep.
Okay, so you're saying rollover of the gold loan is an option, but obviously you'll be charged a little bit of a penalty, but that will be a little steep. Are there any other restructuring options that would be available for gold loan borrowers, Aparna?
Normally, banks don't do that. Because, like I said, the borrowers in this sector is little already on a shaky ground. So restructuring of the gold loan is not very commonly done.
All right. Okay. Understood. So usually there's not much room for sitting down across and asking for a restructuring proposal for your gold loan. However, Aparna, and again I would say those people who had taken a gold loan prior to this massive rally that we saw in gold prices. Now, like I mentioned, let's say maybe in January or maybe in December last year, when I went to the bank with my gold and I said, look, I want a gold loan. Like I mentioned, if it's 1,000 rupee gold, item that I'm going with, maybe I'll get 600, 700 rupee. But today, the value of that gold has obviously increased significantly. It may have become almost 12 to 1,300 rupees. So can I go to the bank and ask them for maybe a bit of a top up with the same amount of jewelry? Is that an option?
What they would expect is you to kind of pre-close that old one and get into a new contract. So the same, usually these loans are anywhere between 5 months to say about 3 or 4 years, at the most 5 years. So these gold loans are always short-term loans. And so if you have gone in Jan, then if you are going now, then I think the bank would prefer for you to foreclose that earlier contract and get into a new loan now, because they are not going to revalue the mortgage asset and then say, okay, then here is a top up for you.
Okay. All right, understood. So usually, that's essentially how it works when one has to, go about handling. And yes, given the fact that interest rates as well are pretty low when it comes to getting a gold loan, the fact that gold prices as well have rallied. So if you go today to get a gold loan, you may get a higher loan amount as well. Now the question is, Aparna, like you mentioned, it's a faster process, to get a gold loan today. And secondly, about credit history, if you could just talk to our viewers again, given the fact that I'm giving them a collateral, and that was something that's so highly valued, right? Gold. What is the probability of me getting an approval for a gold loan going to be better than the probability of me getting an approval for a personal loan? Let's say if my credit history, may not be all that strong, or I may not be having any sort of credit history because I've never borrowed before, or I've not owned a credit card. So do you think that getting a gold loan would be a higher probability event for me?
It's a very tricky kind of a loan. I'm saying tricky because when you take the gold loan, the lender does not report this to the credit bureau. So this doesn't come build your credit profile or help you get any additional loan or whatever, because this is not reported. Okay. So to answer your question, if the quality of your gold is good and the lender is convinced about the quality of the gold, he makes that assessment and gives you loan to the tune of say between 70 to 75% of the value of that gold that you are mortgaging. Now, what happens, however, is if you default, then you are definitely reported to the credit bureau. So this can mess up your further options of getting newer loans because you've defaulted on a gold loan. But in terms of building your credit profile, this doesn't do anything to your profile because this is never reported. So to explain this further, suppose I take a gold loan for a year, I repay the whole thing, I close that gold loan. That's the end of the story. That's between the lender and me, and we are all done and dusted. So the credit bureau doesn't even know that I had taken this loan and I have repaid this loan properly. So all is well. But so in terms of, if you check my credit report a year later, there is no mention of this gold loan at all. But in that 1 year, if I have made late payments, if I have defaulted on my repayments, then this gold loan is reported on my credit profile. So tomorrow, a year and a half later, if I'm going to look for a personal loan or a credit card, I may get rejected because I have defaulted on this loan.
So basically, Aparna, the positives, that's me servicing the gold loan properly, the interest payments properly, are just sort of, swept under the rug. But any negatives blatantly appear on my credit report. So I get why you are saying that it's a bit risky, or tricky rather, not risky, but a tricky proposition really when it comes to gold loans and and credit score.
Yes.
Well, Aparna, thank you so much for joining us today on the Money Show, and sort of explaining this topic that I'm sure is getting a lot of interest, especially for those people who may be feeling like they're a bit behind on cash. You obviously don't want to sell your jewelry because there's so much sentimental value attached. If you think you are going to be able to cater to the interest payments and the loan payments, which by the way interest will be lower than personal loans, then gold loan could be an option for you to tide over the cash crunch. Well, we also spoke to VP Nandakumar, the Managing Director and CEO of one of India's biggest gold loan financing company. Here's what he had to say about how or what does Manappuram Finance offer for all of you prospective gold loan customers. Listen in as we slip into a short break.
Gold loans are granted purely based on the strength of the collateral. We never assess the customer's cash flow. So, with more money with the available for the same collateral, the customers, whenever his requirements comes, demand comes, he has the option to borrow more. So it cannot be called top up. Even what happens is, what we have seen, we grant loans for a period of 90 days, 3 months, with an option to the customer to renew that any number of times, by remitting the full interest to that date and marking to the market. So many of these customers settle around 20%, 20 to 25% of these customers normally come and settle the loan within a period of 1 month. So another equal percentage may come and settle in another second month, third quarter also similarly. So what is going beyond 90 days or coming up for renewal is only the balance quantity. So what happens is, rather than top up, whenever they have the money, they take it, and they on the second day or third day or even during the same month, they come and avail another loan depending upon their requirement. This is what is happening. The gold loans are very easy to be serviced. The reason is, with the IT infrastructure, IT interface we have provided to the customers, they are able to transact these loans from anywhere. So even there are many customers, they use this just like an overdraft facility, because the customer can come and pledge with us. He can avail a very small amount also. There is no restriction about the minimum amount. So depending upon the weight of the gold, he gets a drawing power which is up to 75% of the LTV. So within that amount, he can transact from anywhere through as an online gold loan. So this platform helps him to transact these loans frequently. So our experience is, what is coming up for auction is much less than even 0.5% of the total pledge.